Colby. Thank you guys so very much for listening. If this is your first time listening, or if you're just joining us, every hour we do a couple of trivia questions. So you can either call to pledge, you can call to answer the trivia question, you can do both. But that number to do either or both is 785-621-4110. If you have a question for any of our on-air guests, you can call in at 785-621-5061, or you can text us at 785-656-0150. And something that I want to start us with on this hour is we do have a book to give away. So that book has been given to us by Heil and Ann Huguenin. It is, or actually, sorry, it's not a book. This is awesome for all parents out there. I'm a little bit excited about this one, but I'm on the radio and I can't win it. But for all of those of you out there with some children, the first caller this morning who gives us $100 or more is going to be given 2 Catholic card games. One of them is a memory game with the Saints, and the other one is Go Fishes and Loaves, a crazy fun card game for crazy fun Catholics. And that is compliments of Heil and Ann Huguenin. They are owners and funeral directors of Hayes Memorial Chapel here in Hayes. So thank you, Heil and Ann, for that. That sounds like, I know my kids love those memory match things and Go Fish. And so that sounds really pretty cool. But to those of you who are calling in and giving us those donations, the first person to get a call in, give us $100 or more, will win those games for the day. We also have some books to be given away. We have for the first new donor within the KRTT, which is the Great Bend listening area, or the KJDM, the Lindsborg Salina area, you have to be a new donor, never given before. That doesn't mean we don't want you old donors coming back. But for the newest donor who gives $200 or more, we have St. Maria Faustina Kowalska's Divine Mercy in My Soul. St. Faustina has great writings. This would be a absolute blessing to somebody's spiritual life. That was donated by our board member, Karen Marcel, and her husband, Doug. So those are for the 2 brand new donors who give $200 or more in those 2 listening areas. All right. I want to get to our first trivia question, and then I definitely want to get to our next guest. And so I'm going to get that trivia question going here in just a second. I hear the phones ring, and so that must mean that somebody is calling in with a donation. That is awesome. Here we go with our first trivia question of the 8 o'clock hour. Remember to please call 785-621-4110. All right. Our question is, which is a recognized symbol of the Holy Spirit? Is it A, sheep, B, butterfly, C, dove? Wow, that's kind of a softball, isn't it, Maddie? Which is a recognized symbol of the Holy Spirit? A, sheep, B, butterfly, C, dove. Don't make you feel bad for calling in and getting that one. That's a pretty easy one, but let's get those phones ringing. 785-621-4110. All right. Now on to the best part of our day. We have another wonderful guest in here. I think you know the man who was in here just right before us. Make sure I've got your mic on. But today we have Maddy Quimby in here. Maddy has an education degree from Fort Hays State University. She taught at Roosevelt Elementary School, Holy Family Elementary School, and is currently a full-time mother where she implements her own teaching program to a 2-year-old Callahan. So you call her Callie?
Both, yeah.
That's super cute. Mm-hmm. All right. She is married to Ryan Quimby, and the family are parishioners of St. Joseph Church here in Hayes. All right. Maddy is getting ready to talk to us about basically all of those things. You know, she's been public school, Catholic school, homeschool, mom raising a child. I mean, you've just been your boots are on the ground everywhere. So that is awesome. Welcome in. And maybe we can start with really quickly. Let me break in and congratulate Leon Staub as our trivia winner. Thank you for listening, Leon. Congratulations. We'll get you in that drawing. Back to Maddy. All right. I got to teach at TMP for 10 years. Mm-hmm. and I know why I got called there, but I'm more interested in knowing, how did you get called to education? What drew you to education? Give us a little background into yourself.
All right. Well, just kind of starting from the very beginning, my mom was a teacher. She had her own daycare and preschool. She also quit teaching to be a mom when she was pregnant with me. So I never actually got to see her in a classroom,
Mhm.
but her love of teaching came out in her being a mom. And so growing up, I saw her find any way to educate. And so I think that was kind of instilled in me at a young age. I attended St. Joseph's, and then moved to Holy Family when I was in 3rd grade when they moved buildings. I then went to Kennedy because we didn't have the option to have
Uh-huh.
a private middle school. So I went to Kennedy and then back to TMP for high school and then Fort Hays for college. So even in my own educating, I had some private school, some public school. And so I think that that helped me, just kind of going through school and seeing the different types of education and knowing where I wanted to teach. And so from Fort Hays, I actually moved to Kansas City for a year and I taught in Kansas City for a year in the Blue Valley district just to kind of
Okay.
get some new experiences, try something new. And then I came back and I knew in my heart I always wanted to teach at Holy Family. I loved my time at Holy Family as a student and I wanted to be that teacher.
Yeah.
I wanted to be that Mrs. Shirley Dinkle, that Mrs. Teresa Schrant. I wanted to be them. And so
Yeah.
um and even my teachers at TMP too. I just knew elementary was kind of my passion. And so um the teachers stick around at those schools. So there were not very many
Yeah.
openings. So I kind of just had to sit and wait. And, like anything in life, your prayers aren't always answered right away.
Uh-huh.
So I taught at Washington for a year and then Washington closed. So I spent 4 years in special education, 1 year at Wilson and then 3 years at Roosevelt.
Oh, wow.
So I have my master's in special education. And so I really found kind of that niche that I loved. And so my 5th year in the district, I saw a job opening at Holy Family and I was torn. I loved where I worked. I loved who I worked with. I loved the students I worked with at Roosevelt. And so had to start praying and I knew I was being called there, but it was also kind of hard
Yeah.
sometimes. And so after a lot of discussion, I wasn't married yet, but I was engaged. And
Okay.
so having that discussion with Ryan, a big difference between public education and private education is the pay.
Yeah.
And
Yes, it is.
so kind of, newly married, having to have those kind of very serious discussions off the bat. Um, I decided to apply for the job and ended up getting it. And so then I spent my last 5 years at Holy Family, and it was
Yeah.
just truly a blessing. It was everything I could have ever imagined from teaching. And while I loved my time teaching at 489, there was just always something missing. And it was that relationship with God that I could have with my students. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
That is such a blessing. You're right to have that. I've always said we need good teachers everywhere, and so it
Mhm.
is a blessing for your time, and that is good to hear that. Like, yeah, I loved my time, as you said, at the public schools, and so
Mhm.
that is fantastic because there are some great educators and administrators in our area, and we need that very much.
Mhm.
I'm just a little curious myself because you said you taught over in Kansas City.
Mhm.
What are some of the differences between just Kansas City and Hayes teaching?
Well, the biggest difference that I can remember, it was quite a few years ago. I taught in the Blue Valley district there, and it is a very wealthy district. So
Okay.
just the resources that those schools had just in that district. I think there were 23 elementary schools in
Oh
that
my
district
goodness.
only. And I mean, their elementary kids are learning French. And I was like, whoa,
Holy cow.
I am in over my head here. It just the size, but
Okay.
when you get down to it, kids are kids.
Yeah.
So once you get into a classroom, kids are kids.
Yeah. And that's as parents, aren't we always teachers?
Exactly.
So some of that does come through. I've never got to teach the littler ones, but now that I'm in charge of the faith formation on Wednesday nights, that's one of my favorite things to do.
Mhm.
Is I love going into the kindergarten classroom, the first grade classroom, and just visiting them because they're
Mhm.
always doing something, cutting out pictures and coloring Noah's Ark and stuff like that. But I imagine it takes a ton of energy to be with the little ones all the time. But they are, I think, some of my favorites is those little ones at that age because they're so full of wonder,
Mhm.
and so I think that is just an awesome thing is where we as parents get to see it with our own kids,
Mhm.
that sharing it with other children within the classroom, that had to be such a blessing.
Yeah, it takes a special person to be a kindergarten teacher.
I think so too.
The youngest I ever did was first grade,
Yeah.
and even that was hard, but I always say even sixth graders are kind of just big first graders most of the time.
Yeah, which is why it's nice that I'm in charge of the program because I can go into the classroom and then be like,
And leave.
well, thanks.
Yeah.
So yes, God bless all of you teachers out there. You are awesome. Thank you so much. Want to break in really quickly and thank Fred and Kim Taylor from Victoria. They pledged $550 and say they really appreciate Catholic radio. And so, as you guys know, because of our matching funds, that then immediately jumps up to $1,100. So that 550 becomes 1,100 with those matching funds. Continue to bring those in. Thank you so much, Fred and Kim. We are so blessed. I mean, sitting here, I just get to sit here and talk and have conversations with people like Maddy, and all of you are the ones calling in and supporting us. And maybe they're calling just to say, get this guy off. No, I really do appreciate it. It's so great, but I don't want to take up too much of Maddy's time with me talking. I want to get right back into it. And maybe just kind of go through some of those, making that transition to the Catholic school side. You did say one of those things that was missing was the faith piece of it.
Mhm.
And that obviously has to be a huge thing.
Mhm.
Were there other things that when you made the transition, you either noticed like, I didn't realize that this would be such a huge thing, or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think every single year I was at Holy Family, it just something new hit me that it was just even just how I personally grew in my own faith going back through, teaching the religious education to the students, just how much I personally grew. And kind of like I said, kids are kids. When I was at the public school, like I said, I loved my time there. You had good days, you had tough days. No matter where you're at, you're going to have those days. But that thing that was missing was just being able to share my faith with the students. I mean, you can wear, I could wear a cross necklace, I can have a crucifix on my desk, but being able to openly talk to those students, I just wasn't able to do that. And so, I would have a student that was having a tough day. Maybe they had a loss in the family, something like that. And I wanted more than anything just to sit down and pray with them and just to talk to them
Oh,
about that.
wow.
And I couldn't do that, And so,
Yeah.
and I think having that piece that it was just missing. And so when I got into Holy Family, I remember that first day, I wasn't used to all of the routines that, they did. And
Uh-huh.
the students knew more than I did at that point because I was brand new, and the morning announcements start, and every single student stood up and pushed their chair in and said the morning prayer that everybody said.
Yeah.
And it almost brought me to tears just having that as the very first thing that we did in the day, that it was just like, this is what was missing, having
Wow.
those. And so, and there's just so much more that comes with that, getting to talk about God every single day, getting to pull on some of my personal experiences, whether they were good or bad, talking to the students about that, sharing in sacraments with my students, um, going to confession with my students. I always loved that time because
Yeah.
for little kids, confession can be scary sometimes. I mean,
Absolutely.
for adults, it can be scary sometimes too.
Absolutely.
And so kind of getting to talk to them and be vulnerable with my own mistakes, that they get to see me as just a normal person, you know. My
Yeah.
favorite story to tell my students was how when I was about their age, I got grounded for 6 months, and they're all like, "What? You're not perfect?" It's like, no, no one is.
Mrs. Quimby went to a reconciliation. Did
You
you see
know?
that?
Yeah, and so, just sharing in sacraments with my students and getting to pray with them. I remember even at the public school, I would kind of pray over my classroom every morning before the students
That's
would come
awesome.
in. I would sprinkle their desks with holy water, and I remember sometimes they would come in and they would ask why their desks are wet, and I'm like, "Oh, nothing, no reason." And then, coming to Holy Family, I just kept doing it because that was kind of my morning routine, and
Uh-huh.
then, the students would ask why their desks were wet, and I was like, "Oh, I guess I can tell them," I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, I pray for you guys every morning. I sprinkle your desks with holy water," and then watching them come in and almost look if their desk has water on it or, like, fight over it, they wanted to get that
Oh,
holy
with that one,
water.
that's extra blessed today.
And so that was just really, really cool, and then after a couple of years, I was like, why am I doing this when they're not in the room? Why don't I wait until they're in the room and
Oh,
pray with
wow.
them then,
Yeah.
because I can. And so it became one of my favorite routines that after they would do their prayer in the morning and all of the announcements, they would all bow their heads and I would pray for them and I would sprinkle them with holy water. And they could hear the things that I was praying for them. And I just loved that. I loved that moment with them. And so, and then another big difference was kind of the discipline. Going through Holy Family, we do something called VBRD or
Mhm.
virtue based restorative discipline.
Yeah.
And that was probably the biggest difference once I got in there, just in the act of teaching, actually teaching isn't, ooh, I bumped that,
That's okay.
that different. But kids are kids and they're going to mess up just like
Yeah.
any of us. And they're going to need to have some consequences. And so the way that virtue-based restorative discipline gave me the opportunity to talk about those virtues and to discuss them. And again, it's not just you did something bad, here's a consequence. It's how do we restore the harm that was
Uh-huh.
done? How do we fix it? How do we not do it again? What
Yeah.
virtue is lacking? And so I think that was a big thing, is just the virtue education.
Mhm.
I loved that aspect of it.
Yeah.
And that it starts so young. You've got those kindergartners that have heard the word integrity. They might not know exactly what it means, but when they're 10, 12, even 16, 18, they're going to have known about integrity from when
Yeah.
they're tiny.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so important.
Absolutely. I have to give it to all of you public school teachers out there, Catholic school teachers also. And obviously, public school kids are not inherently worse than any Catholic school kids.
Mm-mm.
They're all
No.
kids. But as a teacher, that did have to be so difficult. And you said that a little bit. I often told my students, I'm like, guys, I wouldn't make it a day in public school, because I said, even kids who take Catholic school education for granted or just like, even kids who like, I don't want to be here. I'm like, for whatever reason, okay, I can understand maybe you don't want to be here. But think about the things we can talk about. Even when it came to moral issues,
Mm-hmm.
I said we can actually freely have a discussion on any moral topic we want to, age appropriate,
Mm-hmm.
in this school. You can't do that at a public school. And so that had to be, you already said that a little bit, that had to be such a difficult thing. So how do you, one of the things you already said it. You prayed over the kids and sprinkled your room with holy water. I love that before they came in. How do you, in a public setting, teach virtue to kids without necessarily, like, how do you do that without getting in trouble, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yeah. I mean, you can still talk about virtue.
Mhm.
Integrity is
Yeah,
important no matter what setting you're in. And so you can still
correct.
talk about it. It's just that you can't necessarily relate it to God or to stories from
Yeah,
the Bible. And so, and they're also not hearing it. They're not always hearing it from everyone. And that's another
yep.
cool thing is, if we're studying a virtue or they're struggling with a certain virtue and they're hearing it not only from me but from other teachers, they're hearing it from the school counselor, from the
Mhm.
principal, vice principal, the priests that come and visit, the sisters that are there now, they're hearing it in the homilies on Tuesdays and Thursdays mornings when they're in mass. So they're hearing it from all over in the private schools. In the public schools, I might have been the only one to ever mention that to them, and they forgot it by the time they left my classroom, And so, you can still talk to any child about integrity or
Yeah.
kindness or honesty. So you can still do it, but I just think that it's going to sink in so much more when they're hearing it year after year after year from every teacher that they have.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
Mhm.
and that is maybe a great lesson. And I'm sure that a lot of the teachers out there in the public system already do that.
Mhm.
Because you're right,
Of
you don't
course.
have to speak of it as a purely Christian principle.
Right.
You can, the golden rule, as your
Mhm.
dad was just in here talking about.
Mhm.
Like, um, if you really think about it, is that how you would want them to treat you in this same situation?
Right.
And so I think that is something that would be very tough, which is why I told my students very seriously that, yeah, I wouldn't make it a day because I can't just like not
Yeah.
talk about it in a way that I just wouldn't make it. So God bless all of you out there, who are teaching in that situation because you're finding those ways to incorporate virtue within the classroom, without specifically having to say, well, the Bible or the
Mhm.
church teaches, or, just being able to say from a natural standpoint, how do we treat one another with respect and dignity,
Mhm.
and so that's awesome because I know it's a lot more difficult. I had the freedom to say whatever I wanted on the faith,
Right.
and didn't have to ever fear any repercussions.
It would
So
probably be harder now if I tried to go back to the public school. I think since I
because now
started
you're
in
able to,
public school and
uh-huh.
went to private, it was different. I think if I were to go back into the public school, it would be much more difficult for me.
Okay. Yeah.
I still substitute teach from time to time, so I've been
Mhm.
in the public schools, but that's different. You're just there for a day, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, looking at both sides of it, what are you've mentioned some of the pros of coming over. Are there other pros and cons from either side
Mhm.
that you would say I've really seen or experienced this?
Yeah, I think of the public school, kind of two major pros. The public school generally has more resources.
Mhm.
We are lucky in Hayes that we've got amazing donors and supporters of Catholic education. So I don't think that at Holy Family or even TMP, we ever felt that we didn't have resources, but it just might have been a little delayed.
Yeah.
The public schools were one-to-one iPads. The students all had iPads a couple years before Holy Family and TMP were able to go one-to-one with devices.
Yeah.
So I think your public school is always going to have more resources. Which is good, but like I said, we've got great supporters here, and so
Yeah.
eventually the private education usually catches up. And then diversity, I think, is a pro of the public education. You
Hmm.
just you're exposed to just much more diverse people and situations and opinions,
Yeah.
and so I think that can be good and bad, but I do think in the long run it is good to be exposed to a little bit more of that diversity
Hmm.
that you see in the public education. But in the private education, obviously, just the religious education, getting to learn about God every single day. And I would even talk to my students at Holy Family about this and have them compare their days when they were in school and then during summer. I would have
Yeah.
them think about, how much do you actually pray during the summer?
Yeah.
And some of them are like, oh, not very
Not.
much. I'm
Yeah.
like, well, when you're in school, it's just part of your daily life. So having that every single day, I think, is obviously a major, major benefit to private education. Like I said, just sharing in the sacraments, learning more about the sacraments, about the virtues, and then just the relationships. Any relationship that has God as the foundation is going to be stronger than one that doesn't. And so, I had wonderful relationships with my students from 489. I still see them. I love to see them. Some of them now have my husband as a teacher, and so that's kind of fun. But my relationships with my students at Holy Family were always just a little bit different. And I think they just were a little bit deeper because God was at the foundation.
Yeah. That's, you've already really kind of mentioned some things as to if I was a public school parent, what would maybe make me look at going to the Catholic school side. Something that I have to give huge props to Father Damien. He is kind of the driving force in behind making sure that every Friday during adoration, reconciliation is available to the youth at TMP.
I think that's so cool.
And that is awesome. And he even started taking an account of how many kids go. Don't worry, he's not taking names or sharing anything that shouldn't be shared, but he simply wanted to be able to share that with parents. And I don't remember if it was last Friday or one of the recent Fridays. I think they had 50 some kids go to reconciliation.
That's amazing.
That's 50 kids that I guarantee on their own, like you said, during the summer, there's no way. I don't even know if we have reconciliation on Friday. Oh, I think you can go down to the campus center, but there's no way. I mean, I can almost say that with 100% surety, no way any of those 50 reconciliations would have happened in the summer on a Friday.
Right.
And so to know that, and just to know also, I mean, yes, a lot of times kids do take it for granted. But there are those kids also who I have heard so many stories of kids who I went for the first time in 3 years. I went for the first time in 5 years. Just even teaching there, I was able to, I was never judging a kid. Oh, you're not going, or get up and go. I was always praying during that, like, Lord, if there's anybody who needs to go, please give them the strength to get up. And it was always so heartwarming to see someone who you've never seen go before, and they get up and go, and you're like, oh, God bless you.
Yes.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
And so, maybe then, what are other things that if parents are kind of thinking about, well, I've thought about maybe sending my kids to Holy Family or to TMP. If your family's doing well and you're teaching the faith at home, well, then good and well. And if you love the schools, well, then, you're doing what's right. But maybe if there are parents out there that are thinking, well, I haven't really looked at Catholic education, what are some things you think that maybe they should take into account?
Looking at any school, I think class size is important. Making sure that, if there's 30 kids in a class and you've got one teacher, it's really hard for that teacher to give proper attention to all 30 kids.
Yeah.
So I think class size is important. I think, as I mentioned, kind of discipline policy, how that matches with your own personal discipline policy at home. How do you discipline your children at home? How are they being disciplined at school? I think that that's also important, that it matches, or it's at least something that you can support from home. I think that that's important. And then just kind of like what you were saying, even if you are doing a great job of teaching the faith at home, you have, your family has their own perspective or their own way of looking at things, and being in the religious setting, in the private education, they're hearing it from all the different people. They're being exposed to priests and sisters on an almost daily basis. So when that conversation of vocations comes up, they see those priests and those sisters not so much as these perfect holy saints, but just as human beings, because they're playing basketball with them at recess. They're, you have the bishop playing football and breaks his nose. And
sorry, we had to bring that up, Bishop.
And so I think there are amazing families that do great education on the faith at home, but there's just something to be said about them hearing it all day, every day from their peers, from their teachers. And I think so if a family's looking at it and they feel that, their child could benefit from that. I mean, who couldn't benefit from that? But like I said, even as a teacher, I remember those first couple of years just learning so much about myself and my own virtue education and my own virtue in my life grew just being around it every single day again as an adult. So
absolutely. And I love that we have the sisters here now. For years teaching at TMP, I always felt bad because I was always telling the girls, well, and there's a religious vocation for you. Go find one somewhere. I'm like, you can go to Wichita and check them out, and we always had priests around, and so the boys were always able to see a priestly presence, but the girls I always felt were left out. And so when God called me from TMP to St. Nicholas, I thought it was such a blessing that they were able to bring the sisters in. One, because you ought to see my classroom now. It's like 100 times better because it has a female touch. And it's one of the sisters. I walk in and I'm like, oh my goodness, this room needed this so badly. My students tell me that too. Your room looks so much better now. I'm like, I know, I'm not going to argue with that. But also now, the young ladies have those examples in front of them, and these sisters are so joyful.
Yes.
And I love being around them. They're those people that I love to encounter them because you really feel like you're encountering Christ. And so I agree that I think that being able to have those religious vocation presence in front of you, and then also have people who are in the married state, the single state, we have like all bounds being taught from at TMP, and so you have the vocation spectrum.
Exactly.
And when it's like you said, when it's coming from every spectrum, you kind of got to be like, oh, okay, there are people here who actually love their faith and live it out in every vocation.
Yeah. And I loved that. We even have deacons available. We had Deacon Dave that he could come in and talk because we would go into that, lesson in our religion book about vocations and talking about the priesthood and talking about the different types of deacons. You can be a permanent deacon, you can be a transitional deacon. And then, those students just have the best questions. I always loved
absolutely.
The questions they would ask. And 90% of the time I was like, oh, I don't know. I'll ask somebody else. And I just remember Deacon Dave walking down the hall one day and I'm like, hey, my students had a question. He was like, I'll be in. And he just came in and talked to them for probably the whole hour of religion and just answered all of their questions. And just having those resources and having that available that, a student can look at it and say, I might be called to the priesthood, but I also really feel like I'm being called to the married life. Well, that's also a possibility. You can still, there's so many ways to serve our Lord. And so having them exposed to all of that. And like you said, the sisters, I'm sad I never got to be there with the sisters. They were there a little bit at the end of last year. And so I got to talk to them. And I remember one of them coming into the classroom to talk to my students. And she just had the most calming voice and just the most amazing presence. And all of the students were just enamored by her. And she left and I was like, why don't you guys treat me like that? And they're like, I don't know. She was just so they just didn't even know. I was like, no, I get it.
Me too. I was too.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. I want to take a quick break here. We are on talking with Maddy Quimby. You're listening to Divine Mercy Radio's Fall Care-a-Thon. Our Care-a-Thon theme is His Mercy Endures Forever. It's something great for us to think about, to contemplate, and to really let sink into our souls. As you're listening today, please call in with those pledges to 785-621-4110. As you all know, we are a nonprofit. We absolutely can't do this without you. You're what makes our radio station run. You're what makes people tell us that they love listening. There are all those stories out there of people who, tune in for a little bit and then become Catholic, or tune in for a little bit, and even if they don't become Catholic, they start listening, and they start pondering, and they want to go toward the truth. And that's what we're here for, is to give people the truth. So thank you for partnering with us. Thank you for giving us those funds. Please continue to call in, because we still have those matching funds, which means that every dollar you give automatically becomes doubled. Call in to 785-621-4110. And we also do every hour 2 trivia questions. So I want to get to the second trivia question of this hour. You call that same number, 785-621-4110. And if you are the first person to get it correct, we will put your name in a drawing. At 6 o'clock today, we will draw that winner, and you will receive a $50 gift certificate to Messenger Traditional Catholic Books and Gifts. Jerome and Angela Schmeidler are the owners down there. Go in there, check out their store. It's a beautiful store. Anytime I have a need for anything, I go directly to them. Don't buy from Amazon. Instead, go to them, because they have everything you need. They can get it for you, and it supports a wonderful local business and family. So here is your question for the second half of the hour. What conditions must be met for sin to be considered mortal? Is it A, grave matter, B, full knowledge, C, deliberate consent, or D, all of the above? What conditions must be met for a sin to be considered mortal? Is it A, grave matter, B, full knowledge, C, deliberate consent, or D, all of the above? Get that phone ringing. I hear it now, 785-621-4110. I think also that maybe we ought to send out there that the Catholic schools, if Holy Family or TMP, if you can, let your kids listen a little bit today. Let them call in. They can win also. And then at the end of the day, at the 4 through 6 hour, it's only kids that can answer the question. So here we go. Back to our talk with Maddy Quimby. She has been a teacher both in the public sector and the Catholic school sector. But now you're able to be at home with your little one.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my wife, when St. Nicholas offered me a job, and it allowed her to be, she was just like, this is what I've always wanted to do. So how did that become available for you? And what are you using to bring your child up in the faith?
So like I said, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My sister-in-law is a stay-at-home mom. And so I think from a young age, I just always thought I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. That just was the plan. Now, my husband's also a teacher, and as we said, teachers don't get paid a lot. So looking at it, it was like, oh, this might not be for us. And I loved teaching. And so, I kind of had to look at it and say, well, just because my mom did it, just because my sister-in-law is a stay-at-home mom, maybe that's not for me. And that's okay too. There are moms everywhere that are working mothers, and they're amazing as well. And so, I was like, maybe that's not for me. And so we had Callahan in February of 2022, and I went back and taught that year of 22-23, and it was a wonderful year. I got to have my niece in my classroom, which was just so fun.
That is great.
It was a great year. I loved it, but I missed being home with my daughter. And I just really, really missed getting to raise her. And we were blessed that my parents are amazing and wonderful, and they kept Callahan. And so I knew she was in good hands. It wasn't that I was worried about any of that.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be the one to raise my daughter. I wanted to be the one to introduce those things to her. And as parents, we are called to be the first teachers of our children.
Yeah.
And I felt if I wasn't there, I couldn't be that. And so we prayed a lot about it and talked a lot about it. And we're still living on a prayer because, one teacher's salary is not the best, but
Yeah.
you had my dad in here earlier talking about stewardship and just if you can give to God, then he's going to bless you back. And I think that we're seeing that now that I'm trying to give of more of my time, because we might not have as much treasure to give at this time, but we're being blessed and we're seeing that. And I mentioned it before, I'm still substitute teaching because I do still love teaching. And I knew if I just completely left it, I would miss it terribly. So that gives me the flexibility to teach when I want to and be home when I want to. And it was the right decision for us for now. And they'll always need teachers, so I can always go back to teaching.
Yes, they always will.
Mhm.
So I want to break in and congratulate Donna Bailey. She's our trivia winner. We will get your name put into that drawing, Donna. And also Kelton and Jill Steckline, some very good friends of mine, and also people I look up to. I think Kelton and Jill, thank you so very much for living the way that you do. Thank you so much for pledging $250, which automatically becomes $500. Still making sure I get that simple math done. But, Kelton and Jill, thank you so very much for being wonderful people. I think they also live out that stewardship model very well in their own lives, and just great folks. And we also got another anonymous donor from the Hayes listening area who pledged $50. That is awesome. Also, thank you so very much, because now that just became another $100. We've got those matching funds, and you guys just between both of you, you just gave us $600 in total. So that is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for living out God's call in the stewardship model, and understanding what that really means. We have the blessing to be on the radio today. You're listening to our fall Care-a-Thon here on Divine Mercy Radio. His mercy endures forever. We're talking with Maddy Quimby. We've had such a great conversation because she's been able to see kind of all sides of teaching, public school, Catholic school, being a stay-at-home mom now. Callahan is 2.
Almost. She'll be 2 in February.
Okay. So, she's talking, running
yes.
around, lots of energy, I know what I see in my home. What do you see and what are you teaching in regards to the faith already to Callie at this time?
Well, I mean, it's easy to go on the internet and see things and feel like, you need to be doing all of these big projects. I mean, Pinterest is amazing, but you can get some cool ideas there, but also sometimes it makes you feel like you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
At this age, it's just keeping it simple, doing the little things, praying before every meal. She loves to pray.
Yeah.
She loves to do the sign of the cross, even though she doesn't quite get it right most of the time, but just those simple things, praying, in the morning, praying before bed. We have her prayer book that we do, and every single night. And she's got little children's Bibles around, and so just keeping it simple and doing the little things now, I think is where it's at. And then the biggest thing is taking her to church. I can't remember where I heard it. I think my mom said that if the church is not crying, it's dying.
Yeah.
That it is hard to take a kid that's crying or fussy or even mine's so wiggly. It's hard to hold on to her, and you feel like everybody's looking at you, but you just keep taking your kids to church.
Absolutely. One of the things, and I think every parent who's been through it, at least the parents I know aren't like scowling and, oh my
No.
goodness, actually, I know that I'm always smiling,
Mhm.
not because I'm like, I went through it. Now you're going through it. But actually, I'm always smiling because I at that moment I'm praying. I'm like, God, give them the grace, because I know it's difficult. Because
Mhm.
yeah, as a parent, you're sitting there, you start to get kind of hot and sweaty, and you're like, please just be quiet, please just be quiet, and like, come on, Lord, couldn't you make them be quiet, and but yeah, a lot of the rest of us parents are just praying at that moment, but we're also smiling because you're exactly right. Father Jarrett actually used to say, if anybody gives you problems for having your kids in church, give me their license plate,
Mhm. Right.
but he's so right. And you're right too, that if there's not noise, then yes, our parish is dying, and
Mhm.
that's not what we want. And so, yes, I think that's also a great testament.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, and just seeing it evolve, because I grew up behind your family as as you guys
Oh,
had children and little ones, and
squirmy worms.
yeah. Um I grew up watching your children, and so now, I have my own children, and have even taught some of your children,
Yeah, I
and
know. That's
so
awesome.
seeing that evolve is pretty neat. But yeah, I love taking her to church, and I mean, she loves Bluey. She loves the show Bluey, and they actually have a handful of religious songs
Oh,
on
wow.
Bluey, and the other day they played one at church, and she looked at my mom and she said, "Bluey's song." So she made that connection. She's somehow musical. My husband and I are not, and I was like, we're gonna have to go to a bunch of concerts or something, because she's very musical. But she recognized that song in church, and so I thought that was pretty cool.
That is awesome. And let's be honest, all of the rest of us anyway are basically spending our mass time making faces to try to make them smile anyway. I
Yeah.
mean, Lord forgive us. I
Uh-huh.
know, but I also, God is looking down and smiling,
He loves the
because
children.
yeah, the children are Jesus's favorites.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, never feel bad, especially like daily masses. I think that's probably even a little bit harder,
Hmm.
because it is more of there's not a young crowd
Right.
generally at daily masses. And so, yeah, one little peep is a lot louder in a daily mass. But I agree. Keep taking your kids there. That's a blessing that will pay dividends.
Hmm.
In the end, kids will remember that. Mom, remember when we used to, even if it's just once in a while, in a kid's head, a lot of times things are every week you took even if it was just once a month,
Hmm.
to them, they'll grow up and they'll be like, man, you took me all the time to daily mass. You remember that? And
Yeah.
yeah, and they remember that stuff. So
And we like to try to go as a whole family. My parents are there, and Tucker and Jill are there with their kids, and I think it's cool that they get to grow up and see us being Eucharistic ministers and readers, and now
yeah,
Sperry and Tracer are servers. And so, my daughter's going to get to grow up and watch her older cousins being servers and readers, and Tucker and Jill will go early. We go at 7:30. They'll take their kids even earlier and take them
yeah,
to confession. And I just think that getting to experience that as a whole family is really neat.
absolutely. I want to change gears just a little bit. We've
Mhm.
got about 10 minutes left here. I don't know what your thoughts are on, I think we have some really great homeschool parents here
Mhm.
in Hayes too. I've met some of them. I know some of them, and they are just great people.
Yes.
So I don't know what your thoughts are on whether you'll homeschool, whether you'll send them to to TMP, or to Holy Family, or what your thoughts are.
Mhm.
But kind of maybe going there is actually, hold on. Before we get to that, I got to announce this. Mark and Cindy Washburn pledged $500, which becomes $1,000. But they put in here that Cindy was Maddie's teacher and
Yes.
Maddie was Cindy's granddaughter's teacher.
Yes.
So They said, Maddie, you're doing a great job this morning. And so, I know my rambling was a whole lot less important than letting that be known. Thank you, Mark and Cindy, for your pledge, which that 500 becomes 1,000. And God bless you for that connection.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Washburn. She was my kindergarten teacher. And then I just had her granddaughter, Tessa, in 4th grade last year.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. What a blessing we have in this community.
Yes.
All right. So what are your thoughts on homeschooling then?
I think homeschooling is amazing. I mean, education is not a one size fits all.
Yep.
I think you have to really look at your family, what works best for your family. Like you mentioned, we've got some amazing homeschool families in the community that I think just do really, really wonderful things. I even know there's families that do both. They've got some kids that go to school and they have some kids that stay home for homeschool. And so sometimes it's not even what works best for the whole family, what works best for each individual child. And I think that that's amazing that we have so many resources that families are able to do that. And so I think it's cool. I mean, homeschooling gives you so much flexibility in their education that, you know, if you've got a child that is in 4th grade, but really excels in math, they can be doing 7th grade math and 4th grade reading, where in the school system, it's not as easy to pick up a 4th grader and stick them in a 7th grade classroom. So you've got so much more flexibility in their learning and just so much more freedom. I mean, you're learning about Mount Rushmore. You want to go load up and go see it. You can go see it, you know? And so I think there's some amazing benefits to homeschooling. But then, you know, there's obviously all of the benefits that we talked about private education and public education. And, you know, I think we'll just have to have that discussion when the time comes. I mean, I can see Callahan doing any of it. I would love to homeschool. I would love to teach her, but then, you know, at the same time, I would love for her to go through Holy Family. My husband's at Hayes Middle School. I would love for her to get to go and be taught by her dad as well. And so, you know, I could see her, you know, going lots of different directions, and it's just going to be something that we have to pray about when the time comes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we have, I don't know if you know about it too much or anything, but you probably do the new atrium at Holy Family.
Yes.
And I know some of the homeschool families are taking advantage of that opportunity.
Cool. I did not know that.
They have a group going on Friday mornings.
Awesome.
And so, even though we're not a homeschool family, my wife does take our smallest Augustine. He's only 3. And so she takes him with the homeschool families, and they do the atrium on Friday mornings.
That's really cool.
And so that's another one of those blessings that the sisters brought with them. You know, it's
the Catechism of the Good Shepherd. I remember them talking about it at the end of last year. And then when I substitute taught at Holy Family this year, that was one thing I was like, I have to go peek in there and see, because I was just so interested. And my little niece, she's in 1st grade. She talks about it. She loves it. And so I think that's a really, really cool resource.
Yeah, that is awesome. All right. We have just a little bit of time left. I wanted to remind everybody that you are listening to Divine Mercy Radio, our fall Care-a-Thon, His Mercy Endures Forever. We've already had a couple of wonderful hours of guests here this morning. We're so blessed that people are able to give of their time, take time even away from their family and their loved ones, take time away from their work to come on here and speak about, you know, the important things in life, speak about the truth, speak about why Catholic radio is important. But even then, the topics we're talking about now, public school education, Catholic school education, homeschooling, all of that, and be able to give people the resources they need. But none of that would be possible if it wasn't for donors like you, people that gave this morning, people that I know will give throughout the day. And maybe that is you. Maybe the Lord is impressing that upon your heart right now. Pray about it. Ask him, you know, whether he wants you to partner through praying for us, which is always needed, or whether he wants you to partner with us through prayer and some sort of donation. We appreciate everything that you guys give to us, and we will will guarantee to use it wisely. Remember that we do have those matching funds that we want to try and get rid of as many of them as possible, because that means that we're using donor funds wisely. So you give and it automatically becomes a double donation because of those matching funds. So I want to finish out our talk here with Maddy Quimby. We've had a great discussion and want to wrap up here with just, is there anything else that you kind of want to leave us with on thoughts on this topic that we've discussed?
I would just say that, kind of like we mentioned, as parents, we are the first educators of our children, whether that's basic education or education in the faith. So, start early, take them to church, read to them every single day. Reading just is the most beneficial thing. So,
Yeah,
read to them every day, and then when it comes time for education, do your research and just pray about it, and God will guide you.
absolutely. I recommend getting one of those children's Bibles. We have 2 or 3 versions of them because they are so used
Hmm.
that the binding's falling off. And it's amazing that my kids will pick that up all the time, especially my littlest. Will you read me a Bible story?
Hmm.
You know how good that does a parent's heart to have your child ask if you'll read them a Bible story?
Yes.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Reading is one of the best things you can do for your children. Read often, read a bunch,
And
and
let them see you read, I think is cool
absolutely.
too. When Callahan's sitting on the floor looking through her books, I like to pick up my book and let her see me read sometimes too,
Yeah.
and model that. And yeah, we have the Jesus Storybook Bible, which I don't know if you've ever seen that one, but it's really neat. I would read it to my students at Holy
Uh-huh.
Family too. It takes the Bible and turns it into more of an entertaining children's story, and there's little jokes in there, and I
Uh-huh.
love the illustrations. So, we like to read through that one with Callahan too.
That is awesome. Well,
Yeah.
Maddie, thank you so very much for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your gift with us today, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye.
Thanks. You are listening to Divine Mercy Radio Fall Care-a-Thon. His mercy endures forever.